first hour of the show. Let's not even be humble about it. It was that good. It was that good. Hour 2 is going to be even better. It's going to be that much better. Don, you know, you've been doing this for a while.
For a while, yes. For some time, even.
Yeah. That was a beautiful first hour.
What's more, a while or sometime?
I think a while should be longer.
It's been a while.
Well, is it just a while? Or
it's almost the exact same amount.
I've been doing this for some time or quite some time.
Quite some time is a lot of time.
No, quite some time means more than a while. But I feel like some time and a while are almost the same thing.
See, I don't feel that way. But, you know, I would defer to you if you're right. I just don't feel you are. Look, you know what? Let's bring in Buster Olney.
Yeah.
He's been doing this
It's been a while.
A while.
Now, Buster, do you feel that a while and sometime is the same?
Close, but I feel like sometime is longer.
Really?
I don't know why it feels that way. Yeah, it does to me. You know, I appreciate you pitching the question to me, though, because that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of pitching, I told you this was going to be a great hour. So many important players in baseball getting hurt. And I'll just start off this way, Buster. I thought that Tony Clark, you know, the statement he released blaming it on the pitch clock was really odd. Now, I'm not saying that you just discount that. It should be looked at. But it seems like it's velocity that really is at fault for all these injuries. What are you hearing and what do you think?
Yeah, I thought his statement was completely disingenuous. And I also thought that it was just wrong. Parts of it, you know, when he came out and he said that, you know, there was unanimous, he used the word unanimous in that statement, opposition to the pitch clock. Well, you know, and I know, because we walk into clubhouses every day and you talk to players, that's simply not true. Like, I'm guessing like 80% of the players probably are in favor of the pitch clock. And when he cited the pitch clock only as a reason, as you know, for all this absolute wave of injuries we've seen in baseball, I mean, what, has he not been paying attention for the last 12, 15 years? And he knows that. Like, he knows there's so much information, and has been for years, about how the chase for velocity, you know, might be a factor. How the fact that pitchers now are trying to spin the ball harder than ever on every single pitch. They have become drag racers, where it's just maximum velocity, maximum spin, and lately maximum blowouts. And there are also factors like, you know, travel baseball and kids throwing more than ever. And, you know, professionals, as Alex Wood wrote, you know, the pitcher wrote today that now pitchers throw year-round in a way that they didn't when he first started. There were a lot of factors that went into it. And what's really bad about, you know, Tony Clark's statement and MLB's response is that you really get a sense that at a time when they could really use, the sport could really use a great collaborative relationship between MLB and the Players Association, there is none. And they're not going to talk at a time when they really need to get together and try to solve this problem. And I think people believe there are some things you can do.
See, I'm with you. I mean, I think the pitching situation's a problem, but I think the bigger problem is that these two sides just do not get along, and the league cannot grow and move forward with these two guys complaining to each other. Garrett Cole described it as like a divorced couple, and nothing is ever accomplished. If MLB decided to just have a press conference that the sky's blue, Tony Clark would say, well, you know what, the cloud, it's actually white, and we're going to strike to prove it. Like, they, instead of looking at this issue and trying to figure it out, they just use it as a bargaining tool or a way to snipe at one another, and nothing ever gets accomplished. I know there's always a problem between the bosses and the union in all sports, but at some point, you got to collaborate if you want to grow your sport.
Don, completely agree with you, and it felt like both statements that were released were political, right? I mean, Tony Clark has been, you know, under siege. We know, we've been reading about the issues within the union, and this felt like a chance to go out there and try to rally the troops in a way, and it's like no one believes it. And we've seen, you know, the words of Justin Verlander in the interview he did on Sunday, and Garrett Cole and Alex Wood and Jamison Taillon. Like, the players know it's a really complicated, nuanced issue, And why do that with that issue as opposed to trying to build a bridge to the other side so you can have conversations about what can we do to make the situation better?
Now, one thing, Buster, and this is a two-pronged question. Number one, he's not going rogue, so there must be pitchers that do not like the pitch clock. He's speaking
Correct.
for them.
Well, and I'd say this, and I've had a lot of conversation with pitchers who believe that the pitch clock has contributed to whatever degree to these injuries. And that's something for Major League Baseball. It's important for them to listen to that. You know, in the spring, I did a podcast a couple months ago where I had Zach Eflin of the Tampa Bay Rays and Rich Hill, you know, oldest pitcher in baseball, Caleb Coslin, the pitching coach of the Phillies, and they talked about, you know, in some cases, I know Rich and Zach believe that it contributed to injuries. And what, you know, the feedback I got from them and I've gotten from others, you know, in clubhouses is, look, at least give us a timeout that the hitters have, because there are moments to use the drag racer analogy where they begin to redline. They can feel themselves getting tired in a moment, and they could use a timeout. And maybe you do that 3 times a game. Maybe it's 1 an inning. Whatever the number is, they should do that. And I know Major League Baseball, you know, they've talked about that internally. That's something that they should listen to and follow up with and implement as soon as they can. Like today, come out and basically say, look, starting today, we're giving our umpires instructions that we're going to give pitchers the chance to call a timeout, because there are a lot of pitchers who believe that is a factor, to whatever degree.
All right, so that's a factor then. This is the second part of the question. So that could help solve the pitch timer conundrum. But, Buster, people chase velocity because velocity gets paid and also gets people out. Yep. So how are you going to, unless you just completely change the sport, how are you going to de-emphasize velocity?
Yeah, the incentive to chase velocity is there for pitchers, it's there for teams, and I think, you know, when Theo Epstein, before he left the commissioner's office, had begun to have conversations about in trying to reestablish the preeminence of starting pitchers, okay? And it would take some time. It's not something where you could change a rule today and suddenly everything would be better. But I think it would help baseball move toward conditions that might be safer for pitchers to work in. And that would be, you know, to reduce this absolute parade of relief pitchers that we're seeing, where everybody's coming in following a starting pitcher who's been told, throw as hard as you can for as long as you can, and then we're going to bring in the relievers after you. Reduce the number of pitchers that you have available to each team, you know, per game. And my own feeling is that if you were to tell managers, look, you're limited to 5 pitchers per game, with obvious exceptions for blowouts and for injuries, and that way there's some incentive. Hey, let's leave the starting pitcher in there. And you know, starting pitchers, if you do that, then they're not going to be maxing out if you're trying to get them in the 6th or 7th inning. Max Scherzer told me an idea last year where it's called the double hook, where you tie the starting pitcher to the use of the designated hitter. So you basically say, look, manager's there with a choice. If he leaves the starting pitcher into the game of the 6th or 7th inning, that means more plate appearances with your DH. You have to build some incentives there. And from the union perspective, I think this would be really important to try to restore the preeminence of starting pitchers, to keep them in games longer. And, oh, by the way, there'd be a collateral impact because offensive numbers would go up, right? Which is what they've been trying to get to. If you have starting pitchers stay in the game 6 or 7 innings more routinely with fewer relievers involved, offensive numbers would go up. Starting pitchers' value would go up. And because pitchers aren't redlining as much, then you maybe reduce some of the injuries.
Well, Buster, Don has said this for years, and he's right. All of us, we don't understand. I mean, we understand why Garrett Cole gets a lot of money, but guys that pitch 5 innings, why are these starters getting a lot of money? You're right. If they extended them and they became 7-inning pitchers, to me they'd be worth more and they'd be paid more.
And they would go back to, and this is why a few years ago, an official with the union said, what's our biggest issue? And I don't know if he expected me to say revenue sharing or something like that, but I said, you got to restore the preeminence of starting pitchers for the reasons that we mentioned. And these guys for years have been the headliners in the sport. They've been the Hulk Hogan's, The Rock, the start of Roger Clemens versus Pedro Martinez. Baseball is losing that. They need to put these guys back on a mountaintop. But what's happened is, because there's such groupthink in baseball, so many teams now are basically not even bothering to develop the good old-fashioned starting pitcher who goes 7 innings. They're basically just asking pitchers in the minor leagues, look, throw as hard as you can, spin the ball as hard as you can, throw your best pitch over and over and over, red line. And so it would take some time to go back the other way and to say, in 2027, we're going to go back to a situation where teams are only going to be allowed to use 5 pitchers in a game. Or let's say they reduce it per game. Each team is restricted to 10 to 12 pitchers on their roster. Something so that these outings for starting pitchers get longer. And I think that would help everybody for a lot of different ways. But they have to put the rule in place because teams are not incentivized to do that right now.
If things stay the way they are, would there be any appetite to change the win to 4 innings instead of 5?
Boy, yeah, I know, because it's kind of ridiculous now. Maybe that's how you do it, right? Maybe that's some of the incentive you build in for the union, because that's a stat now that has gone out the window. Justin Verlander, as he comes back with 257 wins, he's not only trying to become the last guy to get 300 wins, but we may never see another 200-game winner with the way this is going right now.
All right, so that's a problem. That's obviously a big, big deal. Now, we've had an interesting beginning of the season. You've got the Pirates playing well. You've got the Guardians playing well. The Yankees are 9-2. What's the biggest surprise there? And I think the Yankees could sustain, not 9-2, but they can sustain. Do you think that either the Pirates or the Guardians could sustain?
I think the Pirates can. They have time. Ben Cherington, the general manager, they've collected all these terrific young players. Brian Reynolds, they've actually invested in some of them, like we've seen with the Atlanta Braves, where they sign the players to long-term deals when they're really young. And they've hit the timing right, so they're all getting better together in a weak National League Central. So I think they're here to stay. The Guardians, on the other hand, they just lost Shane Bieber for the year. We'll see if that has an impact. And they can't hit home runs in an era in which teams live and die by the home run. It's going to be tough for Cleveland to maintain an offense over the course of the year. And I do think the Yankees have some staying power. I think one of the challenges for them is going to be, obviously, the question of how much can they get out of Garrett Cole? Will he come back? If he comes back, how are they going to go out and add during the course of the year? This is one of the collateral impacts of all these pitching injuries, is that you're going to have so many contenders going after a very small pool of available pitchers, like Jesus Luzardo of the Marlins. But I think their offense is here to stay. The additions of Soto and Verdugo, to me, were absolutely perfectly timed, to be along with Judge at the top of the lineup. And, one of the questions I have is at what point does Aaron Boone put Anthony Volpe in the number 1 spot in the lineup?
Tonkin gets traded to Minnesota. Tehran pitches 1 game, gets DFA'd. Is Stearns just actually auditioning guys like in season? Or is he just kind of throwing darts up, trying to see if something sticks? Like, what's the game plan here with some of these moves?
No, and I think that what you're seeing is someone who is really good at running a small market team with the Brewers, using a lot of those type of moves and trying to plug and fill and trying to find solutions. And it's why, as we go forward, if they don't improve, then you got to believe that, because right now he's got Steve Cohen's ear, that, trading Pete Alonso is going to be on the table at some point. And it would be a big deal. But, I mentioned the Pirates getting the timing right. What really, for me, is becoming apparent is that the timing of the Mets and where the veteran position players are versus where their organizational pitching is, it's really poorly timed. By the time they get their organizational pitching in order, then you know what? Guys like Lindor and Nimmo, they could be on the backside. And it's something that David's going to have to address as he takes over here.
Talk with Buster Olney, our colleague at ESPN, here on the Michael Kay Show. Now, I love the game of baseball. It gives me no joy whatsoever to just bash them. But, Buster, how are they allowing the Athletics to play 3 years in a minor league ballpark? I mean, if Tony Clark wanted to really flex, he'd refuse to have his union play in a minor league ballpark. It doesn't make sense. Couldn't there have been a better solution to that?
Yeah, you would assume, and I agree with you. Today we're just going to rip everybody at the top of the leadership chain on both sides because it doesn't feel like there's any leadership on this issue. I cannot believe that the other 29 owners don't step in and say, look, this is not going to work for us. Because you think of what John Fisher right now, the A's, he's kind of like the guy in the golf club who's running around the course wearing nothing but a jock strap, swearing at everybody, not acting, conducting himself with the same rules everybody else expects. And you keep wondering, when are the other 29 owners going to say, look, this makes us all look bad. It's terrible for the sport. It's not only have they been an embarrassment in recent years, but if you allow them to go to Sacramento, where you get the 14,000-seat park with 4,000 of it people sitting on the grass, are they literally playing in a minor league facility? But because they're not going to have any revenue stream, it guarantees that they're going to tank at least 3 or 4 more seasons beyond the seasons that they've tanked. They're going to have to borrow the integrity of all the other teams. I agree with you. Why not just go to them as they have with other teams and say, look, we're buying you out. We'll give you market price, but we're buying your franchise, and then essentially put them up for auction and restart conversations. Hey, Oakland, put together a proposal. Sacramento, put together a proposal. Vegas, put together a proposal. You know that there's going to be people, billionaires, who want to buy a baseball team. You're probably going to get a much better situation than you have right now. I don't understand why they stand by and let it happen.
Now, we had on your colleague Jeff Passan a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him straight out, what do you think Soto's going to get? And he said $50 million a year. Are you in agreement, or do you think it's going to be a different number?
I do. I think he's right. I think he's going to break Ohtani's, contract record, and that is the actual number. The fake number is the $700 million number. Okay, present day value, his contract's worth $461. He's going to break that. He's in an amazing position because, first and foremost, he's a Hall of Fame talent. The closest thing we've seen to Ted Williams, in decades. He's in a perfect spot with the team this year to have an absolutely phenomenal year. And at the end of the year, he's got the Yankees trying to keep him, and he's going to have the Mets coming after him. You cannot have a better bidding situation. So I do think that that's absolutely reasonable to think that he's going to get $50 million a year.
Now, does it matter? Are the Mets going to go after him no matter what? Or if you're a Yankee fan who wants to keep Soto, are you rooting for the Mets to be competitive and make the playoffs so Cohen doesn't have egg on his face after a bad year and feels like I have to pay Soto no matter what because of what happened in 2024?
Don, I don't think it matters. I think the Mets are going after him one way or the other.
Okay.
Whether it's because they have a bad year and they lose Alonso and they have to begin to change the conversation, or if it's because they're looking ahead and saying we need an anchor to build around going forward. And certainly Soto at his age would make him more attractive to the Mets if they see a long runway ahead of them in developing the pitching. Whatever it is, the Mets are going after him.
It's interesting you say that because Yankee fans have been calling in, and it looks like such a perfect match with the Yankees. It really does. The ballpark, the support system, the Dominican fans, all of it. It seems perfect. And the Yankee fans are saying, well, the Yankees should sign him now. Buster, I don't think that's a viable opportunity. I don't think that Boris would advise him to do that. Even if the Yankees came in and said, listen, we'll give you $500 million for 10 years, I think he'd turn it down.
And all we have to do is look at the Aaron Judge situation and his negotiations to tell you that to get into an open bidding situation, which is what Scott always advises, you're going to get more money, right? The Yankees are sitting at $320, and then lo and behold, Peter Seidler, the Padres, kind of come out of left field, surprise everybody. They offer him a $400 million contract, and that, in the end, was what made the Yankees move to 360. And so if you're Boris and you see this, a phenomenal bidding situation developing, you probably wouldn't have that conversation unless Soto became one of the very few Boris clients who went to Scott and said, look, I'm happy. I want to stay here. Jared Weaver did it with the Angels. Andrew Jones did it with the Braves. It's possible for Soto to go and do that. Right. Altuve's done it. So it's possible that happens, but it's unlikely. And if you look at the history, it would make sense for Soto to hit the market because he probably would get more money if he had these two teams bidding on him.
And also, Buster, he loved playing in D.C. He said he wanted to play his whole career. They offered him $440 million. He turned it down. So now you're 5 months away from being a free agent. Why would you change your tack? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Right. And I just personally hope for him. I had this conversation with Alex Rodriguez when we worked on Sunday Night Baseball together. When he signed with the Texas Rangers for $252 million, twice as much money as any of the other professional athlete in North American sports with that contract. And within 2 weeks, he did an interview in which he said to the New York Post, all things being equal, I wish I had signed with the Mets, which was one of the saddest things that I ever saw. I hope that in the end, Soto, who's going to get an incredible amount of money no matter where he signs, if he decides, look, you know what, this place or that place is the place where I'm going to be most happy. And maybe that's with the Mets, maybe it's with the Yankees, we'll find out. But he seems really happy with the Yankees.
And he's playing very well. Buster, thanks so much, always.
Okay, guys, thanks for having me.
That's Buster Olney. So interesting stuff on the pitching situation and some of the surprises in baseball. We haven't talked to you that much, so we're going to take some phone calls when we get back. You know the number, 1-800-919-3776. But first, Peter's going to tell us